So how do you create a brand that truly represents who you are and the products you sell, as well as building a business that you can scale online? That is what this podcast will help you do. My name is Henry Kaminski Jr., and welcome to the Brand Doctor Podcast.
Let me just make this statement loud and clear. Jersey's here, Jersey's here.
What's shaking, everybody? Welcome to another Brand Doctor Podcast live stream. Today, we're going to be talking about if I could go back 14 years and start my business all over again, what would I do differently? So we got my man Oase coming in. Apparently it's raining heavily in Houston, Texas right now. So he's a little bit delayed, but he'll be joining us shortly once he gets into the office. So, man, a lot has changed in business over the past 14 years. So there's a lot of things I would be doing differently. When some may say, well, you can't really compare because 14 years ago, you didn't have the internet the way you have it today. And I totally get that. And there's two ways you could look at it. You could say it's a lot harder to start a business these days, or you could say it's a hell of a lot easier to start a business these days. So it all depends on your attitude, okay? So let's just get something straight. I wouldn't change anything because all of those lessons, personally, professionally, that I have learned over the past 14 years has made me the man, the father, the colleague, the leader that I am today. So I don't regret any 1 second of what I went through over the past 14 years. However, I made a lot of mistakes, and I want to share those mistakes with you today because I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. Okay? It's all about giving to the people that are a few exits behind you on the turnpike. And that's what I'm here to do for you guys today. So we have a nice little show put together for you guys. And I want you guys to, for those folks that are joining us live, and guys, if you're listening to this saying, how the hell do I join this live stream? Every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, we record the podcast live. So if you want to come be part of the conversation, make sure you jump on my email list by watching my masterclass, which you can find on Unique Designz with a Z at the end, not an S, .net. That's how you'll be able to get on my list. That's how you'll be able to get access to the live streams. Okay? So definitely want those folks that are live with us today to participate and to share maybe some of the mistakes and life lessons you learned while growing your business. Okay? And ask any questions. There's no questions that are off limits, right? It's a safe place for you to interact. Okay. So I just want to say that out in the open. Okay. Second thing is, if you are stuck when it comes to developing a brand presence online, I highly recommend you check out the brand assessment on my website. And that's simply going to, again, Unique Designz with a Z, not an S, .net, and just clicking that button that says book an assessment. We're going to sit down for 45 minutes to an hour and really put in some effort on figuring out where you're stuck, or maybe you're not stuck. Maybe you just lack the direction that you need to accelerate things. We're going to sit down, figure out where you are, where you want to go, what's in between that needs to be flushed out so that you could achieve the goals that you're looking for. I can't help you if I don't sit down with you first and do a thorough assessment of where you are. So highly recommend you booking that assessment. All right, so let's dive into this, guys. And again, Oase will be here shortly. What are some things I would do differently if I could go back and start my business all over again. I see Elizabeth's in the house, but I don't see any comments there. So if you want to drop it again, let me know. All right. There's one thing that I want to share with you guys, and it's very easy to make this mistake. And the mistake is to not see the big picture. It's like you're fighting in the trenches, but you're not looking at the entire battle space. Okay, I'll give you a quick example. I remember when I was first starting out, I hated CODs. If you know what that means, it means cash on delivery. I hated that because I got burned quite a few times back in the day where I would let people take advantage of my services. I would get a whole bunch of print work done. I'd go there to deliver the print and they're MIA. And they burned me for a few $100s. And now I had to eat that. And back then I didn't have the financial intelligence that I had today. So I didn't have a cushion of cash. So when I got burnt, I was like negative in my bank account. Because if you guys have been listening to me for some time, I spent every dollar I earned. It wasn't a good thing. So I got very, very, impatient when it came to payment. Right. And some of the old timers that may listen to this may laugh because I was such an a-hole when it came to payment. I mean, I didn't care if it was $25 or $2,500. I shook you down until you paid me. Whereas if I saw the big picture and realized you can't spend every dollar you earn, Henry, I would have had that cushion. Therefore, I wouldn't have cared so much if somebody was a little late on payment or needed an extra few days to pay me. I wouldn't have gave a shit so much. But because I was so narrow-minded, it was like the world was going to end if I didn't get that payment. It put sour tastes in my clients' mouths. And there was a few clients that I lost because of it. So looking at that big picture is so important. Okay. Michelle says, I get it. I've been there. You know, there's an old movie that you guys got to watch it if you haven't watched it yet. There's a lot of great lessons to be learned in this movie. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time, A Bronx Tale. And there's a part of that movie where one of the main characters was owed money from, the neighborhood punk who was like a degenerate, right? And there's a scene in the movie where C gets upset with this guy because the guy's been dodging him for weeks now. He owes him $20, right? So back then when you're, 13, 14 years old, $20 is like $250, right? So C goes after this kid and he's ready to knock his block off because the kids owed him $20 for all these months. So as he's running across the street, the mob boss, who's Chaz Palminteri, calls him back, says, "Where are you going? Get back here." He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "The guy owes me $20 for freaking 3 weeks now. I'm ready to knock his block off." And he said, "You care about," so the mob boss goes, "You care about this guy?" He goes, "No, he's the neighborhood degenerate. I don't even hang out with him." He's like, "For $20, this kid's out of your life forever. He's never going to ask you for money again. So let it go. You look cheap. You keep running after this guy." He's like, "For $20, this guy's gone forever." And that was just such a great lesson to be learned. So there was a few people that stiffed me back in the day, and I just let it go because I knew, one, I was never going to get that money. Two, it took more energy to chase these people down than what it was worth. I could have took that same energy and reinvested it into marketing, into finding new customers, better customers. So that was a lack of big picture thinking that I had back then that I would highly recommend you pay attention to as you continue to grow your business. It's going to teach you patience. It's going to teach you, I get it. There's a bigger story here. There's bigger fish to fry. This was a lesson learned. And to be honest, there was probably writing on the wall back then that I should have saw that made me say, you know what, maybe you shouldn't front this guy. And I didn't listen to it. Therefore, you get burnt. So again, life lessons. Michelle says, I've been defrauded in the past as well. You're 100% correct, HK. Yeah, it happens to everybody. So listen, if you're going to be in business for some time, especially over the past 14 years, it's going to happen to you. I had another person who promised me all this social media engagement and reach and awareness and all of this. And you could tell that wasn't going to be the case. And it was like $5,000. And I had to pay her because I signed an agreement that I had to pay her. But I knew halfway in that that wasn't going to happen. I just wrote it off. Recently, I've invested a considerable amount of money. Didn't really see a return. Just the wrong fit. Not a big deal. Just move on. I'm not going to harp on it. I'm not going to let it bring me down. Just keep it moving. Okay, it's not the last year I'm going to be in business. It's not the last time I'm going to make that kind of mistake. But I know what I would do differently now, which is half the battle right there. So when you go through these situations, it's all about attitude, and it's all about what could I do different next time? How could I prevent this from happening next time? Okay. How about this one? No strategy. Sorry, we got Fratello in the background stealing my thunder here with the itchy collar. Sorry about that, guys. That's what it's all about when you stream live. So not having a strategy, man, if I could go back and plan out my attack when it came to client acquisition, when it came to funneling, when it came to finding the right clients and holding to the clients that I really wanted to work with and repelling the clients that I really didn't want to work with, having like a real clear strategy behind going about that would have solved a lot of headache, and would have probably kept a lot of money in my pocket. So give you another quick example. I had a brand assessment with a client this morning, and he has zero strategy when it comes to building this recurring revenue model for himself. And I get his concern. His biggest concern was, well, when it comes to the marketing of this business, what's that going to look like? Who's going to do that for me? What are their results? And I just felt like he was just it's great to look at the big picture, like I just mentioned, but that anxiety and that stress would have been subsided had he said to himself, you know what? That's a very good concern. However, there's so much work to be done before we get there. We got to discover who our clients are. We got to discover what offers are going to be created. We got to discover how we're going to position ourselves. We have to build a brand foundation. Once you go through that process, how you market is going to be a lot easier, because that discovery informs the strategy, and that strategy informs what we need to design, what we need to build. That's where I believe knowledge is power. So very, very important here, guys. Very, very important. You know what I forgot to do? You know what? I'm going to invite Oase to the live stream. I forgot to send him the email. I'm saying to myself, why isn't he coming on? My bad, Oase. So he'll be joining us shortly. So having that strategy thought out first is really going to eliminate a lot of the anxiety and stress. And so if I could go back in time, I would lay out a strategy first before I started doing what I was doing, because it was like just a churn and burn business. You know, I was only as good as my last project. So thinking through that strategy would have helped tremendously formulate that plan. Okay. There's a couple here that Oase wrote down that I want him to kind of share with you, because I wanted to hear his perspective. He wrote it here in the notes. He said, running on a hamster wheel. And I totally get that. I'm sort of hinting on that right now. When I first started, it was just, how quickly can I churn and burn these design projects out so that I could keep the money flowing? And if I left, if I got hurt, what if, God forbid, I went blind? What would happen then? I'd be out of business. So here's our man, Oase. What's going on, dude? I just realized.
What's going on, Henry?
Oh, crap. I forgot to send him the link to join.
No worries. Sorry, everyone. I'm sorry I'm a little late, but happy to be back.
I gave him the heads up. I said you guys were getting some serious rain over there in Houston. So
yeah.
So here's what we covered so far. No big picture. I explained some stories there. No strategy, just willy-nilly in it, right? But you wrote here, running on that hamster wheel. And I wanted to get your perspective on that, because what does that mean to you? And you've been in business for quite some time now. So what does that one-liner mean to you?
Yeah, to me, it's same thing. It's like fighting in the trenches, not really focusing on anything else. Every time I get new business, I'm back into fulfilling that one project rather than going out there and generating new business every single time and, helping the business grow. It's, my business only runs on that particular project, and that's it.
Uh-huh.
So that's the hamster wheel. I'm just doing the same thing over and over again, and not necessarily, leading the business. I'm working inside of it.
I remember those days.
Yeah. It's horrible, man.
Yeah. I mean, you really feel like a prisoner inside of your own business.
I can't do this. I can't come here and be present and do this, right? I was there. So, and I hope that the audience today are able to hear that level of frustration that's really coming in from where I was 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
So I could not come in with the level of clarity, or to whatever extent that clarity I have today. I could not come in to provide that value to anyone's audience.
Yeah. You're shackled.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're not free to do things on your terms. You're not free to run your business the way that you intended, the way that you envisioned.
Right. Bob says, replace the wheel with a plan and strategy. Yeah.
There you go.
That's powerful. Now we have another point here that man, we could both share some serious stories about this, but having a clunky process or no process at all inside of your business, which will lead to frustrated clients. It's going to lead to a frustrated team. It's going to really hurt your brand's reputation. Okay. We all know the story that I share frequently about losing $40,000 in one day, and because I had to refund 2 clients because I didn't have a bulletproof process to take them through, and the projects went off track. They went not well because internally I wasn't able to do that level of work at scale. So when that happens, the first thing to go is your internal structure.
Yeah.
And it made me realize I need to invest heavily in this if I'm going to build anything great out of this business long term. And man, back in the day, I didn't know what a system was. I didn't know what a process was. It was like, oh, you need that design? I'll just jump on Photoshop and get it done. Meanwhile,
Exactly.
Now you have 50 clients that you're working with. You could ask my wife. There were times where I got so frustrated where I would be super nice to the client on the phone or on a call, and then I would get off that call and I would like motley crew my office because I was so overspent. I was stretched so thin because I didn't have anybody to delegate the work to. I was doing it all. So as happy as I was to get a new client, I was horrified at the same time. I was miserable at the same time because I was like, now how am I going to get this done? It's a horrible feeling. It's a horrible feeling. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And I think that's what led me to sort of my breakdown on year 5 and made me reach out to Russell Brunson for help because I couldn't continue my life that way. And it wasn't fair to me. It wasn't fair to my family. It wasn't fair because my wife couldn't even talk to me. I was such a ticking time bomb. She didn't know what she was waking up to that day, whether I was going to be happy Henry or horrible Henry. And man, that's tough.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking,
I know, man.
What if I was on that? What if I was her? Yeah. That would be really, and it's not fair to my clients. Let's talk about that for a second. It's not fair to your clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I can totally relate with that story.
Totally
Want
to share something?
That story, man. Yeah. Same thing. I don't know if you've ever had a disagreement with a client where, you know, you guys are in each other's faces. But that's what, you know, and I'm so grateful to him for still being my client today, you know, 10 years later. But there was a moment in my business where he and I were in each other's faces. Wow. And, you know, he's about 15, I think he's about 18 years older than I am. But, you know, almost like a mentor, but he has been so patient in making sure that, hey, look, you know what, as I grow, I want to see you grow type of a situation. But when he saw me struggling, he knew that, look, you know, things need to get delivered obviously for his business. Things need to be in line on time and all of that. But at the same time, the fact is that when I was struggling to get my process in place, or even recognizing that I needed to start delegating to the right people and putting the right people in the right place. And I think that that's something that to this day, I still become the bottleneck in my business. He was just like, look, man, you got to get through this. And you know, there was a time where he was like, get the fuck out of my office. You know?
Yeah, I can't do this.
The fact is that at the end of the day, like, you know, the fact that he's still a client of mine is just miraculous. And that's just like, the amount of fervent supporters that I've had. I think they just recognize that, you know, sooner or later I'm going to figure it out, and sooner or later that I'm going to find the way and put it all back together. So they stuck around. So
awesome.
you know, that's my scary story of you know, thinking that I was just going to lose the client, but he was just there as just an ardent supporter.
That's awesome. That's all. I appreciate you sharing that, because I'm sure people listening, people watching have gotten to that point with their a client. And I remember I was driving the time where I got into a screaming match with a client, and the worst thing that you could be doing when you're at that level of rage is be driving. And I remember I had to pull over and just simmer down, because God forbid there was a cop on the road, I would have been in jail. But it's a beautiful thing when I look back and I say, wow, look how far you've come. You haven't had a situation like that in 4+ years. Because I remember it was right before Dante was born. So maybe even 5 years. I have never had to experience that again, because I realized there were things that I needed to do. It wasn't the client's fault, as horrible as that guy was and what he did to me online that day. I still take responsibility for that experience.
Accountability starts at the top.
Yes. If I had my processes and systems in place, probably wouldn't have finished the job, but probably wouldn't have gotten that horrible. But again, that was a beautiful lesson learned. And I remember going to my best friend at the time. We were having dinner, and I was telling him the situation, and at the time I was so frustrated. And he looked at me right in the face and he said, Henry, what makes you think you could treat people like that? And that was it for me. I said, okay, there is so much work to be done internally. I need to get to work. And that's when I started working on myself. I started working on my business, and I started getting the help I needed instead of me trying to put all the puzzle pieces together. Yeah. It's like learning a foreign language. It's like you could get help from an instructor, or you could go out there and try to do it on your own. It's so easier to just get that get that guidance. Rather, we just had this conversation today with my mindset coach. Let's talk about this for a second. When you're training a dog, who do you think needs to get trained more, the dog or the human?
The human.
Yes. So me and my wife are on different wavelengths when it comes to training dogs, right? And we all know that spouses don't really like to take advice from each other. Okay. So it was a very awesome conversation, because my coach was like, you can train Tori yourself on how to operate the dog, work with the dog, or you could bring in a coach or a trainer to train you both. And in maybe 1 or 2 sessions, your wife is going to get it. Now, make sure that the trainer is somebody that she respects before you bring them on. So, Henry, what are you going to do? You going to train her, or are you going to bring somebody in? And the first thing I thought was, Henry, how long do you want this to take? Do you want this to be a year worth of work, or do you want this to be 3 weeks worth of work? So, needless to say, I'll be bringing a trainer in here very shortly. The dog doesn't need to be trained. It really doesn't. We need to be trained. We need to get on the same page so that this dog could benefit from our love. And it's just, you know what it is? We remember who our old dog was. We remember the habits of that old dog. She's projecting those old habits onto him, the new dog. I have full trust in this dog because I spend the most time with it. So I know he's not going to attack a kid. He's not going to nip at a person, because we saw how he was with people and children not too long ago. He's a doll. But she doesn't know that. So I have to respect that. And we have to realize that this is a new dog. So how can I help my wife through that? All right? Because it's a legitimate fear. It's a legitimate fear. And let's, and to be honest, my wife didn't grow up with dogs like I did. So it's a lot different dynamic. So I'm not going into dog training mode, but there was a lesson there that I wanted to share with you guys. So how badly do you want it? How quickly do you want it? And are you willing to get the help needed to make it happen?
Are you coachable?
Yeah. And how coachable are you?
Yeah.
Very, very important. So let's get into some other pieces here. You wrote down here, not having a clear vision. And I think that's so important. Where are you going with this business? You know, back then I didn't know, because to your point always about living, you know, small picture, I didn't know where the business was going to go. I didn't know if the business is going to be around next year. I was just cranking. Next thing you know, we're 3 years in. Next thing you know, we're 5 years in. Next thing you know, we're a decade in.
It flies.
Right. Yeah, but where do you want to take this business? It's such a big question.
Yeah.
But
is it going to be a lifestyle business, or is it going to be something that grows into something that you can actually sell tomorrow for something valuable?
Yeah.
Right?
I didn't think about that back then.
Yeah.
28 years old. Yeah. You know what I mean? My priorities were, what club are we going to this weekend? And what account can I get? You know, what new account, what new club account can I get so I could get all the perks of doing their design work? Yeah. That's what it came down to. That's what it came down to. I wasn't thinking long term. Who do I serve? What's in it for them? I touched on that earlier. I really didn't have a specific client that I wanted to serve. But had I dialed that in a little bit better, I think my messaging would have been a lot clearer, and I would have attracted a very specific type of person. But back then I just took every job I possibly could. And maybe starting out, that's what you do. But I'm talking about the 5 year, you know, the 5 year entrepreneurs, the 6 year entrepreneurs. If you still don't have this dialed in, we have an issue.
Maybe you are outgrowing your clients and you haven't recognized that yet.
That's a great point.
Right? So, yeah, I mean, that's essentially that's what started happening to me. I could no longer take the $50 flyers or you know, the $600 logos or whatever it is. It's just like there's to a certain extent when you start getting the larger clients. Do you want to cultivate relationships with that and, you know, take on larger business in a smaller volume, or larger volume with a smaller engagements? You got to figure out what your business model is. I think both, you know, there are agencies with both types, you know, both that focus on each niche. You just got to figure out what your niche is.
Yeah.
And how effectively you're going to be able to deliver on that. If you have a system aligned to be able to deliver a high volume at a low cost, by all means, run with it.
Yep. You'll
still be able to generate a damn good amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. We have here, so I think we touched on quite a few of these, but there's two that I really wanted to pay attention to before we run out of time, and they are reinvesting back into your business or into other sources of revenue, and not burning bridges. If you guys listen to the Chris Doe and I's podcast, you may pick up on some of that stuff because we went pretty deep in that episode. But reinvesting, you know, when I was making a ton of money, I just spent it so frivolously. And you guys hear me talk about this a lot, but like it didn't even dawn on me to spend $1,000 on a pair of shoes. I did not even think twice about it. And now I look back and I was like, man, there are $6,000 worth of shoes in my closet. Had I took that $6,000, put that back into the business for marketing, what could I have accomplished or accumulated? So that's where my brain is today.
Yeah.
Right. and then reinvesting in other opportunities. You may find somebody who needs a few grand, or they need seed money for another venture. And maybe you want to become a silent partner, and the business plan sounds good. Maybe you take 25 grand and you invest it in to that. Or I wish I would have got into the stock market sooner. Took me many years.
Or just, maybe you need to do R&D, or let's say you're wanting to launch a new offering, and that's that capital that you need to be able to add into whatever it is that you're wanting to roll out.
Yeah. Or take the $6 grand that I spent on 4 pair of shoes and hired a coach.
Yeah. Yeah, that's enough, right?
Right?
What's that worth to you?
Exactly. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. I think that now I just got goosebumps thinking about that. Think about that. Even if
that's how that like, just like what you're telling me, or what you're saying about all this is like the same thing. Like, as my business starts picking up, every single time I get to that next tier level, I'm always thinking, okay, well, how can I repurpose or recirculate this money into the business? Yeah, sure. There's some that of course needs to go towards my own personal earnings, right? However, how can I recirculate this to either hire someone new or buy a new tool that's going to further streamline my process, so I'm not back on that hamster wheel?
Yeah.
I'm not fighting in the trenches, right?
Yep. That's key. That's key. And that's going to help you tremendously have your money working for you a lot more aggressively. And that's a pitch I missed early on in my business. Had I thought about it differently back then, it would have changed the game, right? But it's never too late, and that's something that I really want to share with you. It's never too late. I'm considering a few things moving forward over the next few years that is going to be a definite lifestyle change for me. But I say to myself, this delay of gratification could reap tremendous rewards when I'm older. And that's my concern right now. Our priorities change, as they say, when you get older. And that's what's happening, right? That's what's happening. Let's talk about burning bridges, and then we'll start to wrap this up. There's that old saying that I think Tony Robbins came up with. It was something along the lines of burn the boats. And once you get to the island, burn the boats. And like, I have a love-hate relationship with that theory. I get what he means by it. I totally get it. But I'll just share with you an example. There were times in my past where I would have a client that pissed me off so much, I'd be like, you know what? They didn't even ask for their money. I'd be like, here's your money back. Don't ever hire me again. And I was quick to do that. Sometimes too quick. Because I thought to myself, I don't need them. I could get clients anytime I want. It's a bad attitude. It's a bad attitude. Because you didn't even give them a chance to talk. You didn't even give them a chance. You wrote them off. And I'm talking to myself here. And had I gone back and just had a mature conversation with them, we probably would have been able to rectify the relationship, maintain the relationship, and probably maintain the business. But I was good to burn bridges like that anytime somebody pissed me off. And guess what, guys? Word travels. When you start to act that way and treat people that way, that information travels fast. So I wouldn't want to burn bridges had I start the business over. If the engagement didn't work out, at least leave that engagement in an amicable way.
Exactly.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because not every project is going to be a grand slam. Let's face it. But if you do what we're telling you to do today, chances are you're going to minimize the risk of getting those types of engagements.
Yeah.
And you're going to win. Long term, you're going to win. So it's an awesome conversation. You know, I really want people to realize that, like, as I mentioned earlier, it's too late. You can't change the past. And I don't regret anything that I went through in the past. But I do know moving forward that you could avoid these mistakes. You could avoid these mistakes by us sharing our stories with you today. And that was
I want to share a story on burning bridges.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. I'm just looking at time.
That's fine. I'll be short. So my burning bridges story, same thing, man. I mean, you know, I was a pretty hot-headed in my earlier years, and so, you know, we would have an exchange, and I'd be like, okay, fuck it, let's, you know, here's your shit, move on.
Get out of here.
I think that at least from that mindset, I maintained, I guess, a standard of, I'm never going to hold on to your artwork. I'm never going to hold on to your brand assets. So, you know, regardless whether we part ways on good terms or bad terms. But today, through some tremendous amount of coaching, through the network of people, the trusted advisors that I have around me that have just really helped me polish through this, today I sit down for a debrief, a good audit. If the client is frustrated, let's figure out exactly what's holding them back. Let's figure out if you know, there's something that even if in my mind I've determined that we are going to part ways, that, you know, this can't be salvaged in any way. Today, I'm going to make sure that client is now going to be handed over to another trusted strategy partner that is, you know, that potentially is a competitor of mine. That's okay. Not every client is going to be for me, but I'm going to put that client into good hands where someone else can manage them. Someone else has the capacity to be able to manage them, and they also feel that it's going to be a better fit. And guess what? In the last 2-3 years, when I have dismissed a client with that sort of, and I've audited them, I've given them end of the year audit, and told them that, look, we're no longer at the capacity to be able to help them out, and here's a better fit. They've been very appreciative, to the point where they've referred business to me rather than the other agency that they're working with.
That's fantastic.
So, you know, that to me is a success case.
Yeah, totally. You know, when I sat down with Chris, and I've been working with Chris now for Christo, I've been working with him now for 4 years. He's gotten to know me really well. And he said, there's a common denominator with you, Henry. Frustration turns into anger very, very quickly with you. And that's something that we need to work on, or at least address. And it actually came out in the podcast episode together when I was sort of demanding answers from someone, and that someone was like, I don't need to answer you. My anger went to a 10, right? And I completely, all right, well, then this conversation's over then. Bye. And I left. Where had I slowed down and asked the question, this is where Chris proposes, you could have sat down and asked him, well, how do you think we can help this situation? How do you think we can make it better? Chris made me realize when he asked that question that there's many different ways to approach adversity. There's many different ways to approach frustration, or, you know, a confrontation. you know, and to be open to those alternatives is, I think, the characteristics of a phenomenal leader and a phenomenal business person. And so knowing that is half the battle. Knowing that is half the battle.
Absolutely. A book that really changed my frame of mind in the last 3-4 years was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. You know, especially when you're entering into a situation where there are words, you know, they're just, it's in the heat of the moment. So the one that is really able to you know, gain leverage in that situation is one that is able to keep their cool.
Yep.
And is able to direct the questions in a way where your counterpart feels like you're on their side. I think that's what it all comes down to. And in terms of burning bridges, that make them feel like you're on their side.
Oh man, listen, let's just wrap that up right there. I think that is a phenomenal way to close out. And if you could do that, not only in business but in your personal life, you're going to see a huge difference in quality of life, I think, in the long run. So, always, I appreciate you getting into the office safely. Appreciate you joining us again. And thank God I remembered to send you the link. We'll make sure that doesn't happen again. I appreciate all the live listeners today. We had Michelle and Bob and Elizabeth. Appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Let us know, you know, what your biggest takeaway was in today's episode. Drop it in the comments, no matter where you're listening into or watching from, and share. And we'll catch you on Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. That's where we do our YouTube live stream. We're going to be talking about home pages and how to optimize your home page to make sure that you're generating quality leads and converting those leads into sales. I see a lot of people missing a lot of opportunity with their website homepage, especially if you market to a couple of different types of client profiles. We're going to help you come up with some strategies on how to optimize your website so that you can start bringing in some quality client, and you actually have an asset, a branding asset that is functional and helping you make some money. So,
business tool.
Yeah. So have an amazing day, guys. And we will catch you on the next one. Take care.
That